live. I'm calling this a sleepy October live with kitties. Come, Fuji. Fuji, do you want to come on lap? We just finished eating our various meals and lunch, and now we're sunbathing and getting set up and relaxing, and looks like Suji is cleaning Fuji's tail. Suji's face is so funny. Look at this pose. You know, we are quite spread out here, and we we are tired of being productive, and we are ready for chill time, and we are ready for some book reading, and we're ready to meet some of our friends, and also hoping that we make some new friends and that we all enjoy together. And I should probably share the live, but also hopefully you find this live and decide to join us. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for being here. If you are seeing this live later on as a video replay, indeed, we are very happy that you have joined and watching, and continue to stick around while we get set up here. The thing is, generally I have to share the live before people start appearing. So let me go ahead and do that. Hi, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining. How are you doing? How are you doing? Hello, my friends. Hi, Daisy. Thank you, Daisy. How are you doing? Thank you. All right, so on these live streams, we have been doing various things. On the weeknight live streams at night, we've been covering physics topics, and I have been covering a book called Einstein's Cosmos, and we have been doing discussions along with it, also drawing from my background in physics. And then on the weekend, we've been doing something a little bit more fun, or, well, it's all fun, but just differently fun. We have been reading murder mystery books and discussing that. In the previous live streams, we have covered a couple of books. One of them is by Agatha Christie called Sad Cypress. You can see that in the previous lives if you're interested later on. And then we've also covered something called Every Breath You Take by Mary Higgins Clark. And currently we are actually on a book called Duplicate Death by Georgette Heyer. So we just got this started yesterday, and it was an interesting first chapter. We saw the discussion between Mr. Kane and Mrs. Kane. It sounds like there is this family, there's the wife, there's the husband, they have kids. A couple of them are in boarding school, the others are little and they're in the house. This seems to be a pretty rich family. They have a nanny, they have other household staff. The nanny is very on top of her business and kind of runs the show. We also noted that Georgette's writing style is very different than Agatha Christie's or Mary Higgins Clark, of course. Let's look at some of the timelines, actually. So someone, I think Heike pointed out that that her first novel might have come out in the year 1921. Let me actually double check that. It might be around then that this happened, that this came out, but I'm just trying to make sure that that's true. It does not say exactly, but let me read this part. Georgette Heyer wrote over 50 books, including Regency romances, mysteries, and historical fiction. Her barrister husband, Ronald Rougier, provided many of the plots for her detective novels, which are classic English country house mysteries. Reminiscent of Agatha Christie, Heyer was legendary for her research, historical accuracy, inventive plots, and sparkling characterization. So, and she had, so the 50 books, the first one that I see on the list here, so some of the other books that you might have heard about if you didn't hear about this one are The Black Moth, These Old Shades, The Masquerades, Powder and Patch, Devil's Cub. Hi, Suji. We also have a cute kitty cat here, along with her siblings. Hi, Fuji Boo Blue. Charity Girl, Lady of Quality. So those are some of her other books. Hi, Sabrina. How are you? And we're on Duplicate Death. And we will be starting with chapter 2 today. But we can also, you know, chat and catch up in the live chat. So if you're joining and if you want to say something in the live chat, then feel free. Most welcome to do that. In fact, let me put a comment saying the same thing so that even if I'm in the middle of something, you can still feel free to write your message. Okay. Can you still see? I think you can. All right, let me just put that there for a second. Thank you. Okay. So I said, oh nice. Daisy says I also love books. Sabrina, thank you so much for your emojis. I said thank you for joining. Please share your thoughts and say hi in the chat. We will be reading, and in the meantime, please catch up in the chat with each other, and I will read your comments. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so we will start where we left off, which was chapter 2. So we just saw, Mr. and Mrs. Kane together chatting and everything. And now the scene is changing to Mr. Hart. And basically, I think this is going to be about Timothy and Beulah, who these were the people that they were talking about in the last chapter, about Timothy finding somebody and getting married, and the family not being approving of that, or at least there was some family drama regarding that. So that's where we are, and that's where we'll pick up. So let's see what this chapter looks like. Her writing style is very different in the sense that there's a lot more words in these chapters, so bear with us. Okay, chapter 2. Have an eclair, suggested young Mr. Hart encouragingly. Probably made with egg substitute, certainly filled with synthetic cream, guaranteed rather to atrophy than to increase the figure. His companion, who had been sitting in brooding silence for several minutes, looked up, smiled, and shook her head. No thanks, I'm not afraid of getting fat. Well, that's something, said Timothy. What a repellent joint this is. What do you mean? She asked quickly. That which repels. A table which is not only too small, but which stands on unequal legs, rout chairs, than which there is nothing less conducive to habits of easy social intercourse, a general atmosphere of mob capri, and, not that, why is it something I'm not afraid of getting fat? Oh, merely that it's the only thing I've discovered to date which you're not afraid of. For a moment, her rather stormy gray eyes lifted to his in a wide, startled look. Then they were lowered, and she said in a hard voice, "Don't be absurd." Of course, I don't mean that there's nothing else you're not afraid of, said Timothy conversationally, only that I haven't yet discovered what these things are. Have some more tea. I'm not going to marry you, said Beulah abruptly. Announcements like that, said Mr. Hart, not noticeably abashed, should never be made in crowded tea shops. Besides, it isn't true. It is true. I can't possibly marry you. I ought to have seen that at the start. Why? Have you got a husband who's an RC and won't give you a divorce or any little thing like that? Inquired Timothy, interested. No, of course not. Oh well, then we needn't worry. That's what you think, said Beulah crudely. Look here, the thing is, there are things in my life you don't know anything about. Good God, I should hope there were, retorted Timothy. I've only known you a month, and some of them you wouldn't like. I dare say, come to think of it, I can tell you of one thing in your young life I don't like right now, and that's Mr. Daniel Seton Carew. She flushed. He's not a thing in my life. You need not worry. That's fine. Dissuade him from putting his arm around you and calling you his little protégé. Her color was still heightened. She kept her eyes on her plate. It's only his way. He's old enough to be my father. Yes, that's what makes it all the more objectionable, said Timothy. She bit her lip, but said in a sulky voice, Anyway, it's got nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me. You have plighted your troth to me, my girl. It's no use, I can't marry you. Then I shall sue you for breach of promise. Why, by the way, have you had this sudden change of heart? It isn't possible. I must have been crazy. I can't think why you want to marry me. Good Lord, didn't I tell you? I love you. She muttered, Yes, you told me. That's what I don't understand. Why should you? Oh, I shouldn't worry over that if I were you, said Timothy kindly. Of course, if you insist, I'll enumerate the various things which attract me to you, but they really haven't got much to do with it. To be thoroughly vulgar, we just clicked. Or didn't we? Her face quivered. She gave a rather convulsive nod. Yes, but there you are then. You know, for an intelligent girl, you say some remarkably stupid things. You'd be properly stymied if I asked you what you saw in me to fall in love with, wouldn't you? A flicker of humor shone in her eyes. No, I shouldn't, she replied. Anyone can see what I fell for at a glance. Exactly what about 50 other girls have fallen for. You are exaggerating, said Mr. Hart, preserving his sang-froid. Not much, of course, but slightly. 43 is the correct number, and that includes my niece. Oh, God. I'm afraid she may not take very kindly to our marriage, by the way. She says she's going to marry me herself, but of course that's impossible. If we had only lived in medieval times, I could have got a dispensation, I expect. As it is, you're a fool, interrupted Miss Bertley, laughing in spite of herself. Nor do I think that your niece is the only member of your family who would not take kindly to our marriage. You never know. It's within the bounds of possibility that your family may not take kindly to me. I have no family, she said harshly. What? None at all? I have an uncle and his wife. I don't have anything to do with them. What a bit of luck for me, said Mr. Hart. I was rather funking, being shown to a clutter of aunts and cousins. My half-brother says it's hell. He had to go through the mill, said his hands and feet seemed too large suddenly, and whenever he thought out a classy line to utter, it turned out to be the one thing he ought not to have said. Like me with your mother. Not in the least like that. I distinctly recall that you said how do you do to Mamma, and I seem to remember that you made one unprompted, and I'm bound to say, innocuous remark about the evils of progress as exemplified by pneumatic drills. The rest of your conversation was monosyllabic. Ah. There was an awful pause. Well, there you are, said Miss Bertley defiantly. I have no conversation. I have no wish to appear boastful, returned young Mr. Hart, but from my earliest days it has been said of me by all who knows me best that I talk enough for two, or even more. Your mother, said Miss Bertley, giving him a straight look, wrote me down as an adventuress, and that is exactly what I am. So now you know my aim is to marry a man of good social standing, independent means, and a background. That's why I encouraged you to propose to me. Is it really? Said Mr. Hart. Then why on earth did you waste your time on me instead of gunning for our newest and most socialistic peer? Miss Bertley's air of slightly belligerent gravity was momentarily impaired. Are you talking about Lance Gooseborough? Well, if he ever cleaned his nails or got a haircut. My good girl, said Mr. Hart severely, if you're going to let little things like that weigh with you, you will never get anywhere. I thought better of you. What were you thinking about to waste your time entrapping me into matrimony when there was a whole living baron waiting to be picked up? Or have you been misinformed? I shall, at what I trust, maybe some far distant date, inherit a baronetcy, but when you talk of independent means, you're speaking outside the book. Lawyers and clients being what they are, I am at this present very happy to appear in the dingiest of police courts for the modest fee of 3-1, or even less, my well-groomed air of affluence being due to the generosity of my papa, who makes me a handsome allowance. This is what comes of judging by appearances. I don't say that Gooseborough is a rich man, but you should remember that a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and many a promising communist has been persuaded by a good woman's influence to cut his hair and abstain from wearing fancy ties. Oh, Timothy, do shut up, begged Beulah. Besides, he's one of Cynthia Haddington's admirers. Well, considering the number of times you've cast it in my teeth that I, too, was one of her admirers, I can't see what that's got to do with it. So you were, said Beulah with a touch of spirit. If you hadn't been pursuing her, we should never have met. Mr. Hart sighed. If dancing 3 times with a girl to whom one had been presented at a private party, subsequently accepting an invitation to a ball given by her mother, and following this up with a civil call to return thanks constitutes pursuit, I plead guilty. At all events, said Beulah somewhat viciously, Mrs. Haddington regards you as the best of the eligibles, and if she knew I was having tea with you now, she would probably give me the sack. In that case, you trot straight back to Charles Street, Ducky, and tell her, recommended Mr. Hart. Pausing only to pay the bill here, I will burst off to procure a special license so that we can be married tomorrow. You shall beguile some long winter's evening for me by recounting to me the circumstances which induced you to take a job as dog's body to that well-preserved corncrake. If you want to know, responded Miss Bertley, Dan Sittencarry got me the job. Now, how do you feel about marrying me? Shaken but staunch. Seriously, how did that woman muscle onto the fringe of decent society? I don't know, but I think she was sort of sponsored by Lady Nest Polton, said Beulah. They're very thick, that I do know. What times do we live in? To be sure, poor old Greystoke has had to sell his place, of course, but I shouldn't have thought an Ellerbeck would have stooped quite as low. That must be a thoroughly unfair remark, said Beulah. I know nothing about Lord Greystoke's circumstances, but everyone knows that Lady Nest's husband is rolling. Just what I was thinking, agreed Timothy. So what's the tie-up? Why should there be a tie-up? Because, my sweet, feather-headed nitwit, though may she be, and indeed is, the Lady Nest does not make a bosom friend of a brassy-haired widow on the up and up without having some strong inducement so to do. And they say women are spiteful, exclaimed Beulah scornfully. Do you also imagine there's a tie-up between her and Dan Sittencurrow? She is a friend of his as well. Good God, said Timothy. I wonder if there's any insanity in the Ellerbecks. Sittencurrow is considered to be rather an attractive type. What does he attract? Pond life? Apparently Lady Nest Polton, if you call her a form of pond life. Oh, geez. No, but an unsteady type. Sort of woman who used to go to Limehouse for a thrill in the wicked 20s. That may be it. Of course, though, I should rather describe your Charles Street setup as a menagerie. Really, Timothy, she expostulated. Lots of perfectly respectable people come to the house. I will grant you a sprinkling of fairly harmless types who probably feel that if Lady Nest knows Mrs. Haddington, she must be all right. You don't suppose that Colonel Cartmel or Sir Roderick Vickerstown would be influenced by that, do you? No, my love, I don't. It is well known that both these aged crocodiles will lend the cachet of their presence to almost any house where the food and the wines are first class. Does your respected employer buy exclusively on the black market? If I knew, I shouldn't tell you. After all, she does employ me. So she does. What, by the way, is your precise status in the house? Yes, I know she calls you her secretary, but you appear to me to spend half your time chasing round London with the shopping list. Well, I do her secretarial work, of course. There isn't a great deal of it, so I shop for her as well and see that things are all right when she gives a party and, anything that crops up. And what, inquired Mr. Hart politely, are your hours? I don't have regular hours. I'm supposed to leave at 6, but Mrs. Haddington likes me to be on tap. I'm supposed to leave at 6, but Mrs. Haddington likes me to be on tap. That was difficult to say. Does she indeed? You must be pulling down a colossal screw. Beulah gave a rather bitter little laugh. Unfortunately, I don't belong to a union. I get £3, 10 a week, and quite a number of meals. If another female is wanted... Whoops, sorry. One second, sorry. I get £3, 10 a week, and quite a number of meals. If another female is wanted, with the family, if not, on a train, the library, which I prefer. She glanced up and found that Mr. Hart's very blue eyes were fixed on her face in an uncomfortably searching look. Why do you stick it? He asked. Your employer, to put it frankly, is a bitch. She treats you like mud, and you're at her beck and call from morning till midnight. What's the big idea? It suits me, she said evasively. Jobs aren't so easily come by these days. She said, too swiftly changing the subject. Are you coming to the bridge party? Yes, are you? I shall be there, of course, not playing. That goes without saying. Who's going to be there? The usual gang? I think so. 11 tables plus 1 or 2 people who are either coming as scorers or just to watch. Lady Nest is bringing her husband, which will make it a red letter evening. Generally, he never comes near Charles Street. And who shall blame him? I did not ask if the dashing Dan Sittencrow will be present. Of course he will be. Look here, Timothy, do you imagine you have any cause to be jealous of him? Because if so, get rid of the idea. I thought at first that there was some kind of a liaison between him and Mrs. Haddington, but I seem to have been wrong. It's Cynthia he's after. Satyrs and nymphs, what a repulsive thought. Let us hope it is but a fleeting fancy. I shouldn't think he was a marrying man. His tastes are too Catholic. However, if he's spreading his charm over the shining beauty, that would no doubt account for the display of temperament young Sidney Butterwick treated the company to on the night we were bidden to Charles Street to listen to the Stalham String Quartet. You're disgusting, said Beulah. It wasn't I who was disgusting, Timothy replied. Not that disgusting is the word I should have chosen to have described any of it. I'm all for light relief. I am, besides being very broad-minded. Broad-minded? Yes, but not broad-minded enough to stomach the Charles Street menage as a setting for the girl I'm going to marry. Hi, BJ. You do think I'm an innocent flower, don't you? Yes, and that in spite of all your endeavors to convince me that you have been a hardened woman of the world for years. She shrugged. It's not my fault if you persist in cherishing illusions. I told you that you knew nothing about me. Oh, not quite as little as that, said Timothy cheerfully. I know, for instance, that at some time or another you've taken a nasty knock, which has led you to suppose that the world is against you. Also, that you have quarreled with your relations, and that beneath your not entirely convincing air of having been hard-boiled early in life, you are more than a little scared. Scared? Why should I be scared? She asked sharply. That, he replied, I do not know and do not propose to ask you. I am quite content to wait for the day when your woman's instinct tells you that I am a fit and proper person to confide in. She rose abruptly to her feet, gathering up her gloves and her handbag and saying, I must go. I'd no idea it was so late. Don't come with me. I'd rather you didn't. All right, that was chapter 2. See, just finished that one. We'll take a little break and then continue. BJ. How are you? How is Holland? I'll get up and show you Baji too. He's over there on his tree, all sunbathing today. Stay here. Just taking a little break here. Get started in just a second. Oh wow, their food is falling. I need to. Here you go. Here, Baji. Daisy says, please. Daisy, I'm doing my live right now, so I can't really go and subscribe to you just this second, but once I finish up today, I'll go to your channel. Thank you. Let them finish eating. I'll get some water myself, and I'll come back to the live. We'll still be hanging out here. You can leave a comment on my All right, we'll start chapter 3 in just a second here. You can leave a comment. Hi, Suji. All done eating? Suji's all done eating. She's come back to the couch after her snack. We're not opening the window today because it's kind of cold. It's kind of cold. Kind of cold. I dropped something. Hi, baby. Oh, so cute. All right, I want some water. How's everybody doing? Okay, so looks like slowly we're getting into the duplicate bridge game situation in this book, because we know the book's name is Duplicate Death, and we sort of have some idea, even though we haven't read this book before, that it has to do with the game of bridge. I actually don't know very well how this game works, but I'm guessing we'll learn about that. And it sounds like where the secretary and the love interest of Timothy, Beulah, works, that's the house where this bridge game might be taking place. And sort of as part of that game, there might be some murders happening. We've just been getting introduced to the characters in the first couple of chapters, so we will find out soon how this all progresses. Oh my God. Sorry, I got a message from a relative, kind of weird. My friend, oh, my friend just got married yesterday. Sent me some photos of that. I was not able to make it to her wedding. Very sad about that. But at the same time, this month was kind of hard for me to make those arrangements. So that's why I didn't make it. But if anybody in the chat knows how to play bridge, do tell. Maybe this is a lost art. This book has murder around, let's see, a bridge. It seems this book has murder. This book has murder around that scene of bridge, it seems. A bunch of Greeks tried to teach me, but I never bothered. Hi, Doro Doro. A bunch of Greeks tried to teach me. Aw. I think they were trying to bond with you. Hi, Baji. Baji's, oh, let me show you. Baji's over here now. We will start chapter 3 and we will also say hi to Baji. Hi, Baji, come. Kole ashbe. Kole ashbe naki baba. Come. Come, Baji. Suji's over there now. And Baji's on lap. So they just got their snack, and that's why they were up, and that's why he had to come down from his tree to receive the snack. All right, so chapter 3 of Duplicate Death, where I used to work in a Greek restaurant, awesome people, but it wasn't for me. That makes sense, yeah. Sounds like an interesting experience. Hi, Fuji Bublu. Hi, Fuji Bublai. Okay, so we had the interesting dynamic between Timothy and his fiancée, Beulah, who is also the secretary of this lady, at which point there might be, this lady might be the one who's hosting a bridge game we don't know too much about this bridge game or how it works, but I think we'll figure it out. Anyways, there's some murders that might be happening surrounding that situation. So, anyway, we just met Timothy and Beulah. We'll keep going to chapter 3 now. After I've admired my Suji Bubli. Ole Baba Shonu to. Bijon Shona. Chotu Baba. Chotu Bubli. Chotu Bubli. Hi, Supri Wang. So, alright, chapter 3. The house in Charles Street, which was rented by Mrs. Haddington, differed externally hardly at all from its neighbors, but was distinguished internally, according to young Mr. Hart, by an absence of individual taste, which made it instantly remarkable. Nothing in the furnishing of its lofty rooms suggested occupation, from the careful arrangement of expensive flowers in the various bowls to the selection of illustrated periodicals neatly laid out on a low table before the drawing-room fire. The house reminded the visitor of nothing so much as an advertisement of some high-class furnishing emporium. Sofas and chairs of the most luxurious order were upholstered in the same material which masked the tall windows, and were provided with cushions which, embellished with large tassels, were exactly placed and incessantly plumped up, either by her butler or by Mrs. Haddington herself. The entrance hall and the staircase were carpeted with Eau nail pile, I have no idea what that is. A Regency side table stood under a mirror framed in gilt and was flanked by 2 Sheraton chairs whose seats were upholstered in the exact shade of green to match the carpet. Oh my. So this is the Charles Street house that we are getting a description of, where Beulah works. A door on the right of this broad passage opened into the dining room, mahogany and wine red brocade, and beyond the discreet door which gave access to the basement stairs was one leading into an apartment built out at the back of the house and furnished as a library. 2 tall windows, fitted with interior shutters and draped with curtains of studious brown velvet, looked out at right angles to the dining room onto a yard transformed into a paved garden with a sundial and several flower beds which displayed at the appropriate seasons either daffodils or geraniums. Oh, I like sundial. Standard authors in handsome bindings lined the walls. A passive knee-hole desk bearing a blotter covered in tooled leather, a mahogany knife box converted to accommodate writing paper and envelopes, and a silver inkstand stood between the 2 windows, and all the chairs were covered with oxhide leather. Above this apartment, and having access onto the half landing between the ground and first floors, was a similar room dedicated to the mistress of the establishment, and known to everyone except Miss Bertley, who persisted in calling it Mrs. Haddington's sitting room, as the boudoir. It was of the same proportions as the room beneath, but decorated in quite another style. Boudoir, I don't know. Boudoir, maybe. Diaphanous folds of nylon veiled the 2 windows by day, and opulently gathered ones of lilac brocade drawn across the shallow embrasures shut out the night. A low table of burr walnut, bearing an alabaster cigarette box and an ashtray ensuite, stood beside a day bed furnished with cushions of lilac and rose silk. There were 2 armchairs upholstered in lilac satin, several others described by their creators as incidental, filling gaps against the paneled walls, a carpet of purple pile, and in the corner between the door and the first of the two windows, a spindle-legged table bearing on it a telephone and a reading lamp shaded in rose silk. Thoughtfully placed beside this table was a low cabriole-legged chair, its lozenge back and sprung seat upholstered in the same delicate shade of lilac brocade which hung beside the windows. The floral decoration of the room was provided by an alabaster bowl on a torchère pedestal filled in summer with roses or carnations, and in winter by honesty and sea lavender. The first floor of the house was wholly occupied by the drawing room empire, which was an L-shaped apartment, originally two rooms connected by an archway. So I think we're getting so much description of this place is because the murders are going to happen here. So bear with us. You know, these fictional people are going to die here, so we must know more details of the drawing room, okay? Above this were the respective bedrooms of Mrs. and Miss Haddington, with their bathrooms, and above this again, for 2 floors, was a vast terra incognita inhabited by Mrs. Haddington's staff. Miss Beulah Bertley, whose errand on this February afternoon had been to discover whether there existed in London a firm willing to supply fresh caviar at a cut price for a party of 50-odd persons. Oh my gosh, 50 people. Returned to Charles Street to discover her employer in the drawing room sustaining a visit from her sole and unmarried sister, Miss Violet Pickhill. There was a slight physical resemblance between the two ladies, both being lean, long-limbed, and of an aquiline cast of countenance, but it would have been hard to have found a more ill-assorted pair. Mrs. Haddington was as well groomed as she was well dressed, and her thinness, coupled as it was with considerable height, inspired dressmakers to congratulate her on her wonderful figure. Her beautifully waved hair showed no gray streaks, being of a uniform copper, and if it occasionally seemed to be rather darker towards the roots, this was a blemish which could be, of course, very easily rectified. Her eyes were of too cold a blue for beauty, but her features were good, and if there was a hint of ruthlessness about her tinted lips, this was generally disguised by the social smile which had become so mechanical that she frequently assumed it when addressing persons, such as her secretary, whom it was quite unnecessary for her to charm. Oh. I wonder if this lady's gonna die. You know what I mean? Why are we getting a description of her? Do you think Mrs. Haddington's gonna die? Well, her eyes are cold and blue. I guess that means that she might die. I don't know. Miss Pickhill, some years her senior. Ooh, that's the sister. She might die too. I don't know. I actually don't know what's gonna happen. It's a duplicate bridge game, double murder. There's gonna be a double murder, guys. I'm getting nervous. I don't know which one of these people will die. Miss Pickhill, some years her senior, had no artificial graces. She was shorter and thinner than her sister. Oh, geez, even more thin. The one was non-existent. Sorry. She was shorter and thinner than her sister, and both her complexion and her hair were her own. The one was non-existent, and the other one had faded from gold to dusty straw, here and there streaked with gray. She wore clothes of good material but tasteless design, lived in a gaunt house in one of the roads leading off Putney Hill, which she had inherited from her father, and interested herself in parish matters, the Girl Guides, the Women's Conservative Association, and various other worthy enterprises. No one could fathom what attracted her to the house in Charles Street, for she plainly disapproved of everything she saw there and received no encouragement to continue her visits. The truth was that she was not at all attracted, but had been brought up to know where her duty lay. Hi, Suji, Mom. She said that it was her duty to keep an eye on her sister. She also considered it to be her duty to utter the most blighting criticisms on Mrs. Haddington's manners, appearance, morals, and ambitions, and to prophesy a rapid descent to the gutter for her niece, who had been brought up, she said, to think of nothing but painting her face and running after young men. Got it. She was engaged on this fruitful topic when Beulah returned from having tea with young Mr. Hart and had just informed Mrs. Haddington, whom she persisted in calling Lily, in the teeth of every injunction to alter this commonplace name to Lydia's, that she would live to rue the day when she sent her daughter to be educated at a school in Switzerland instead of rearing her to be a useful member of society when Beulah walked into the drawing room. Mrs. Haddington betrayed no pleasure at the sight of a secretary. "Well," she said sharply, "what is it?" "I'm sorry to interrupt you," said Beulah, laying a scrap of silk on the arm of her chair, "but this is the nearest I can get to the stuff you gave me to match." "Well, it won't do," said Mrs. Haddington, contemptuously flicking the scrap with one pointed, blood-red fingernail. "Really, I should have thought you could have seen that for yourself." "I did, but I thought I'd better bring you a sample of it. And caviar is the same price everywhere." "I sometimes wonder what I pay you for," remarked Mrs. Haddington. Beulah flushed and folded her lips. "Exactly what I have always said," remarked Miss Pickhill. "What a healthy woman of your age, Lily, wants with a secretary, or whatever Miss Bertley calls herself, to run her errands for her is more than I can fathom. Caviar, indeed. More of your grand parties, I suppose, enough to make poor father turn in his grave." Oh boy. These people are kind of rude. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. I think the secretary will be the suspect. Oh my God, maybe these two will die. The sisters. "Enough to make poor father turn in his grave. That will do," Mrs. Haddington said, dismissing Beulah. "Will you want me any more today?" Beulah asked. Mrs. Haddington hesitated. She was taking a party to the theatre and dining afterwards at London's newest and smartest restaurant, so that there really was nothing at all for her secretary to do. "No, you can go," she said at last, "and please don't be late in the morning." "I never am," replied Beulah. "Good night." "A very impudent manner that girl has," said Miss Pickhill, as the door closed behind Beulah. "Not but what you bring it on yourself, with your slave-driving ways. I suppose she'll be leaving next." "Oh no, she won't," replied Mrs. Haddington with a slight laugh. "Yes, that's what you say, but nowadays girls won't put up with the way you treat them, and so I warn you." "You need not worry. I know too much about Miss Beulah Bertley for her to leave me in a hurry. Oh, so she had something on Beulah, the secretary. Now, if you don't mind, it's time I went up to change. I have a theater party. Miss Pickle said severely, theaters and balls. You don't seem to me to think of anything else. Where you get the money from to pay for all this wicked extravagance is more than I can tell. It's no use saying Hubert left you very well off. He didn't leave you with a fortune, and what's more, if he had, it would be taken away from you by the government. Sometimes I lie awake for hours worrying about the way you live, Lily, and expecting to read in the paper any minute that you've been had up for cheating the income tax or running a gaming house. Look at Baji. Look at Baji. Oh. Running a gaming house, really, Violet. I wouldn't put it beyond you, said Miss Pickhill darkly. You can fool all these grand friends of yours, I dare say, but you can't fool me. There's very little you'd stop at, Lily. You've always been the same, out for what you can get and never mind how. I shall never forget how you threw poor Charlie Thirsk over because Hubert came along with twice his income. Well, I'm sure I don't wish to speak ill of the dead, but I never did like that man, and no more did father. He always said there was something not quite straight about him, and as for the people he went about with, well, there's only one word to describe them, and that's flashy, like that Mr. Seaton Curlew I'm always running into here. There's a remedy for that, retorted Mrs. Haddington. Don't come here. Oh, I know very well I'm not wanted, said Miss Pickhill, in no way abashed. But blood's thicker than water, and I know my duty, Lily. With these words, she offered her cheek to her sister, a courtesy which Mrs. Haddington acknowledged by touching it with her own, said that there was no need to ring for the butler, since she was quite capable of seeing herself out, and went away. Mrs. Haddington was just about to go up to her bedroom when the door opened again and her daughter strolled into the room. Cynthia Haddington was 19 years old and a girl of quite outstanding beauty. She was dazzlingly fair, with large china blue eyes and hair of shining gold. A slender figure, exquisite tailoring, and the discreet use of mascara on brows and lashes brought her appearance to perfection. An expensive finishing school, while adding very little to her mental attainments, had taught her to move with more grace than was often to be seen amongst her contemporaries. She was a good dancer, she skated well, played a moderate game of tennis, and had a good enough seat on a horse to show to advantage on the row, if not in the hunting field. Baby, don't baby. Her disposition was uneven, nor did she give the impression of being one who enjoyed robust health. During her first season, she had flagged rather frequently, but she seemed to be growing accustomed to late hours in town life and was beginning to develop astonishing recuperative powers. When she was doing what she liked, she was gay and good-humored, but when anything happened to thwart her plans, she was inclined to fall into what her mother called a nerve storm, and everyone else called tantrums. Those who disliked her said she was wholly devoid of intellect, but this was unjust. Whenever she had a few minutes to spare between her various engagements, she would turn over the pages of society journals, even reading the captions under the pictures, and she never entered her bedroom without turning on the radio. She came in now, looking tired but extremely smart, in navy blue with a tiny hat on her head and very high heels to her shoes, and uttered, in the slightly adenoidal voice acquired through constant study of the delivery in vogue amongst her favorite announcers, "Oh, Mummy, Too sickening. I walked into Aunt Violet on the doorstep. I do think she's too lethal. Why do you let her out? Why do you let her absolutely infest the house? Because I can't stop her, replied Mrs. Haddington. Her eyes ran over the charming figure before her and softened. That frock suits you. I wasn't sure at the time, but it's just right. Where have you been, darling? Oh. Oh, I went to a flick with Lance. And then tea, responded Cynthia, sinking into a chair and casting off her hat. It was rather ghastly, really, with captions and things because of being an Italian, and an absolute purge, mummy, which Lance thought was too terrific. Oh, said Mrs. Haddington, Lance. Well, that's all right, I suppose. I can't say I really like that young man, and in some ways I'd rather hear that you were running around with Timothy Hart. Ooh, that's the Timothy. That's the Timothy that we just saw in chapter 2. I think Timothy's marvelous, agreed her daughter with simple enthusiasm. I mean, he's much better looking than Lance, and I go frightfully big for that kind of blue eye that goes with dark hair, don't you? In some ways, I wish it was him that was a peer, and not Lance. Mrs. Haddington saw nothing to deprecate in this naive speech. She agreed with it in the main, but said that peers were not everything. I don't like the way Gooserborough lives, or the ridiculous ideas he has. If he hadn't come into the title, she paused. Well, of course he is Lord Gooserborough, but he wasn't brought up to be, she said. From all I can discover, his mother was quite a common sort of person. Besides, but never mind that. Do you mean being Lance's father's mistress before he married her? Enquired Cynthia. I know all about that. Trix is frightfully proud of it because she believes in doing away with marriage ties on account of being a communist. I can't believe anything of Beatrice Gooserborough, but doing away with marriage ties has nothing whatsoever to do with communism that I ever heard of. Oh, hasn't it? Perhaps I got it wrong then. Only I do know she wishes her father hadn't married her mother, because if he hadn't, Lance wouldn't be Lord Gooserborough, and she simply hates that. Okay, these people are interesting. Kind of weird. Okay. She won't be an honorable herself, and she's always trying to get Lance to go on being plain Mr. Gooserborough. Actually, I don't think Lance wants to, poor sweet. In fact, I think he's rather thrilled about being a lord. Then I wish he would learn to behave like one, said Mrs. Haddington tartly. Yes, I do too, agreed Cynthia. In some ways, I should prefer young Hart for you. Yes, but he won't ever be a lord, Mummy, Cynthia pointed out. No, but he'll be a baronet. He comes of a very good family, he's well off, and he's got the sort of background I want for you, my pet. I'm not too sure about Gooserborough, the people he mixes with, and the political opinions he holds, and the fact that he wasn't brought up in the right surroundings. Well, sometimes I wonder whether he'll ever have the entree, title or no title. His father seems to have been a waster, and of course, he more or less dropped out when he made that disastrous marriage. How on earth did you find out all this? Demanded Cynthia. I made it my business to find out, said Mrs. Haddington shortly. I'm not going to let you make a mistake that might ruin your life. You're all I've got, and all I care for, Cynthia, and I'm determined you shall have the best. Her daughter yawned. Actually, I shall marry anyone I like, she said. In some ways, I think I should rather like it to be Lance, because there's simply nothing he wouldn't do to please me, besides being Lord Gooserborough. Of course, he isn't utterly devastating like anyone. Anyway, I haven't made up my mind, and the whole thing is too boring. Mrs. Haddington looked searchingly down into the flower, like face just now set into lines of weariness and discontent. You're tired, she said. You ought to go straight to bed, only that we're going to this first night. I shall be all right, Cynthia murmured, her eyelids drooping. You shouldn't have let Gooseberry take you to the cinema this afternoon. Oh, Mummy, don't be so silly. What on earth else was there to do? Sit at home and read a book? Yep. Yep, Cynthia, some people do that. Mrs. Haddington appeared to feel the force of this argument, for she said nothing for a moment or two. The delicate chime of an ormolu clock on the mantelshelf made her raise her eyes quickly to it and exclaim, "We must hurry or we shall be late. Cynthia, tell me, my darling, you haven't been meeting Dan unknown to me, have you?" Cynthia's eyes flew open at that. Dan? Whatever do you mean? Oh, that's right. That other guy. Mrs. Haddington sat down on the arm of her daughter's chair and tenderly smoothed the helmet of spun gold about her pretty head. Listen, my pet, I know Dan's attractive, but he's not the man for you. He's an old friend of mine. But if I thought that you, darling mummy, do be your age, begged Cynthia. I haven't the slightest desire to cut you out with Dan. Mrs. Haddington saw no need to reprove her offspring for this speech. She merely said, "Then that's all right, but you mustn't think I don't know that he's been doing his utmost to get you to fall for him, and of course men of his age." "Too Victorian," interrupted Cynthia. "Really, Mummy, oh God, is it actually 6 o'clock? I must fly." She wrenched her slim body out of the chair and bent to pick up the discarded hat. Mrs. Haddington said, "You'll have time for a hot bath. It'll freshen you up." "I shall be all right," Cynthia repeated. "Who's coming with us?" "Roddy Vickerstown, the Kenelm Gooseburrows, and Freddie Atherstone." "Christ," observed Cynthia. "Well, I know, darling, but the Kenelm Gooseburrows know everybody, and I'm particularly anxious to get you invited to Mrs. Atherstone's dance. It'll be one of those in-time affairs." "It sounds lousy," said Cynthia, and Kenelm is so dull he makes me practically basin sick. Besides, having that dim wife and hating Lance's guts for being the heir. Oh boy. I suppose it'll be some ghastly play too with a message, or something that makes you want to cry with boredom. Mrs. Haddington regarded her in some perturbation. "Darling, if you're really too tired, I'll ring Nest up and ask her if she can possibly—" "Oh, Mummy, do stop fussing," Cynthia said impatiently. "I shall be all right when I've had a bath." Mrs. Haddington looked doubtful, but when she next saw her daughter, she perceived that the hot bath had had unexpected recuperative powers. A vision in delicate shades of floating yellow, not young, chiffon, Cynthia ran down the stairs 3/4 of an hour later and burst upon the assembled theater party, partaking of sandwiches and cocktails in the library, with apologies for her tardiness on her smiling lips, and such a brilliant glow in her eyes as caused Mr. Freddie Atherstone, hovering on the brink of matrimony with another, to experience a serious cardiac qualm. Only Mrs. Haddington, staring for an upwinking moment, seemed to derive no pleasure from her daughter's radiant beauty, and although Mrs. Kenelm afterwards informed her husband that Lilias had looked at Cynthia in the most extraordinary way, the revealing moment passed so swiftly that Mr. Kenelm was able to assert that he had noticed nothing, and that his wife was always imagining things. Oh. Interesting. Weird. Okay. Well, A vision in delicate shades of floating yellow chiffon. I feel like this would be a good movie. I wonder if there is such a movie. That was chapter 3. Now I want a hot bath. These people and their parties and their hot baths in between are making me want a hot bath. How are you guys? Baji, do you want to move a little bit so I can put this down? Sorry, Baji. Baji, it's okay. Everybody, thank you so much for still being here. That was chapter 3 of Duplicate Death. We met Mrs. Haddington and her daughter. Ooh, I think the next chapter is gonna be the duplicate bridge party. It's gonna be in the next one, guys. Wow. Because the first sentence is, by the time that Mrs. Haddington's duplicate bridge party assembled at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, several persons' tempers were exacerbated and Miss Beulah Birdley had been obliged to swallow an aspirin to quell an incipient headache. So, this is where we're at. Oh, there's Baji. Time for a rest. Look, Baji's back to his tree because I disturbed him by moving. Sometimes they don't let me move. What time is it? Hi. Hi, Alicia. It's been so quiet today. Hardly anybody saying anything. How are you? I'm sleepy too. What time is it? 4? I need a hot bath myself. And then I have to... Oh, what just happened? Something moved on my laptop. Today's Sunday. Hey Google, what day is it today?
Today is Sunday, October 27th.
It is today. I'm asking my... Is this today? The dinner. What was I supposed to do? Stay home and read a book? That's what she asked her mother. These people don't believe in staying home and reading a book. What is wrong with them? This is why they went and got murdered. I actually don't know if who's gonna get murdered exactly, but I'm guessing it's one of these people. We've been getting introduced to some people: Mr. and Mrs. Kane, Timothy and Beulah, Mrs. Haddington and her daughter and her sister. Well, within these first few main characters, probably somebody is gonna get killed. Probably two people, because it said a double murder. We don't know yet what that's gonna be like, but they're gonna play the bridge game in the next chapter, it looks like. So we'll find out soon. We'll find out. Indeed. Some of the words that she uses are kind of difficult. And the names. Oh man, the names are difficult to say sometimes. I'll try. I still try. I still try. 'Cause why not? Is this today? The dinner? The dinner? Yes. Oh boy. Boy, oh boy. I had to delete so much. See you at 7:30 p.m. Oh my god, what? Please don't be late. My friend is telling me to not be late. Okay. Well, what do you want me to be? Kayla! Baji! Yes, Kayla. How are you, Kayla? How's the UK? Baji, I'm back. Yay! How is everything? England is going back to... England is good. Going back to school tomorrow. Right, Monday. Everything is good. Just facing fake friends. Oh wow. That is tough. Fake friends. Been there. in school? Well, let me show you Baji. Baji just went over to his Baji. Yes, in school. Happy to see you and Baji. Oh, thank you. Oh, look at Baji. Yes. Kayla is joining from the UK. Yay. Look at Suji. She was spread out in a big, like, big comfy position, but now she's like curled up. Now she's curled up, and here's Fuji. Suji, Baji. Yes, in school. Well, I'm just washing the dishes. That's nice. That's good of you. I did the dishes too last night. I did the dishes too. You sound sleepy. I am. I'm kind of tired. I'm kind of tired. We just read a couple of chapters from Duplicate Death. I don't know if we'll continue this book. I think I'll go back to my physics reading and studying and discussion during the weeknights. But I wanted to do another murder mystery on the weekend. The book is good. It's Georgette Heyer. I don't know. You might know her. She's a famous author of murder mysteries. You're the best person I ever met. Just like my own sister. Aww. Thank you. Just like my own sister. Yay. I am like your own sister. Oh yeah, I know her. Yes. So yeah, you'll know her. She is pretty famous. Oh, this is very zoomed in. Sorry about that. That's her. That's the book. But in fact, you are my sister. Oh, thank you. I needed a little bit of sister love for sure. So it was like, it's good. I think it's definitely a good one to read. I do think that some of the words and names are a little bit like confusing. So hopefully people are getting the gist of it. It's not like that complicated, and I summarized what was kind of happening. But until you joined, Kayla, it's been kind of quiet. So I don't really know what it's going or how it's going too much, because I didn't hear from people too much today. But I thought I'll still read and make some progress. Why not? On the book. And from chapter 4 onwards, it might get more interesting because the murders have not yet happened. It's still set up. The book is getting set up, you know, in the beginning, introducing the characters and everything. I'm glad I joined. Yay! Yeah! Me too. I don't think I've seen Molly on here today. Yes, I need to come there and meet Baji. Yep. Yeah. Indeed. He went back to sleep now. He was on my lap this whole time, but he went back. Oh yeah, Molly, I forgot about her. Yeah, remember Molly? She was here on the live and we were chatting a lot. Oh, is it only 8? It's 8:15? Huh. I thought it would be later. Huh, maybe not. Okay. I should come to the UK. I miss it. I was there last year during this month. It's quite quiet. Yes, it is. Isn't it? It is. Yup. It's so quiet. Whatever. It's fine. Fuji's getting big kisses. Fuji. Fuji. Thank you. I would have seen you. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you. Yes. I don't know if Heike's in the chat or not. Heike, we read Duplicate Death. Hopefully you enjoyed. There's Heike. Thank you for reading Duplicate Death. Happy Sunday and new week to Baji and book friends too. Europe has wintertime now. Oh really? Even Finland? How are you, Heike? Winter time. I have to come. How are you, Heike? I see. Good, but cold outside. Okay, how cold? What? So it's like 8 Celsius now. I understand both Celsius and Fahrenheit because I'm from India. Got it. So it's like 46 right now, but Wednesday night it'll be 30, which is like minus 1. Minus. Indoor plants. It's similar to here actually. This week. Last week was warm. But overall it's similar to here. Like Boston. But I think Finland is more higher latitude though. Let me ask. Finland latitude. Yeah. Northern European nation. Sweden, Norway, and Russia. Helsinki is a peninsula surrounding the islands of the Baltic Sea. Helsinki is home to the 18th century fortress. Oh wow. Have you seen the Northern Lights, Heike? Suchi, koleshpe. Suchi has finally woken up from a long nap. From a long nap. Hi, Suchi. Thank you so much for your sleepy time. Thank you so much for listening to Mama's reading. Oh, Suchi Mama is snuggling. She is next to Mom now. She's next to Mommy. Heike says, many years ago in towns, it is hard to see because of light pollution. Aww. Suchi, have you seen the Northern Lights? She has not. We also have not seen the Northern Lights. We can't because of light pollution. Because I know this year they were more visible. She's such a good girl. Shuchi is a goody girl, goody girl, goody girl. Oh, Suchi's purring. Oh, Suchi is purring. What is it, Suji? Alright, guys. Well, thank you so much for being here and listening to the reading and chatting. I will see you next time. See you next time.